Hello everybody and welcome to this week's knowledge sharing session on dilapidation procedures and the importance of such. First of all, as usual, can we get a little bit of etiquette out of the way? Can we all have our mics on mute? And for the interactive parts, can we have questions submitted predominantly by text in the narrative? And if you'd like to address Craig directly, if you use the hand up function on Zoom, the vid will invite you to speak at the end of the slide. Questions will be filtered by vid as the chair, and you will be introduced at the end of the appropriate slide. So don't get frustrated if it's not answered immediately, and keep the questions coming in. As you've said before, this is a recorded session, and a log of all comments and answers and who proposed them will be shared in due course. Again, mics on mute. If we all talk over each other, it'll be carnage. So the aims of this one is we all are going to learn the importance of an accurate dilapidation survey. They're often overlooked and sometimes they have a huge impact to the project. I have some personal experience. We've had a lot of extra scope at the end of a project due to defective dilapidation survey, and it's cost the project and the business precious cash. Again, we are sharing knowledge and building on the wealth of expertise within ITT. We have specialist expertise in ITT that other companies worldwide don't have. So we're trying to help to advertise how great we are and what we do. So just a reminder that there's an ITT Engineers YouTube channel. The last 3 sessions are up there. Rooney's will be up there after this. We're getting some good feedback, so please keep that coming in. I think the YouTube channel is a great channel to spread the word and gain exposure for ITT. We have a program in place for the next 10 weeks. The highlights, well, there's some good highlights in there, but I think there's one coming up, a double act from Gary Allen and Pete Brown. We're going to have to get the swear box out for that one, I think. After today's session, the next 2 are going to be more personable. So whilst work and professional success are very important to us all and keeps us employed, we all enjoy the stories behind the people at ITT, and that's what makes us world class. And boy, do we have some colourful characters at ITT and TDU, in both Rislip and Lilliebridge Depot. I've worked within both businesses. So, I've had the pleasure of working with both Tom Blackman and Chris Lewis. So they're the 2 that spring to mind. There will be an interactive part to the presentation today. So if anyone wants to take part in the interactive piece, if you can download Kahoot IT to your phone or laptop or computer, whatever it is you're on, and the PIN number vid will share later on in the presentation. So feedback is a big thing that we're concentrating on at the moment. So suggested content we'd like, ideas to promote knowledge sharing. We also want some volunteers to come in to help. So we'd like ideas on how to use this forum better to increase collaboration across the wider business. And if you email me in the first instance, that'll be good. We do have a live link and a YouTube link on the invite. Now for the main event, ladies and gentlemen. He's forgiven me about commenting on what a handsome, strong feature his nose was last week. Craig Williamson, aka Rooney to most people, is going to give a good presentation on and detail the importance of a good, extensive dilapidation survey. So Craig has worked for 13 years on P-Way, so he's an experienced P-Way delivery engineer. He has worked his way through the Balfour Beatty apprenticeship scheme, so it's a success story. He graduated with a civil engineering qualification, worked across Track Alliance, Track Partnership, and ITT. He worked outside Balfour Beatty for a spell on Network Rail and Crossrail, and not a lot of people know that he was on one of the bid teams for the ITT contract with one of our competitors for the presentation. So without further ado, over to you, Rooney, and I'll let you dazzle us with your expertise on dilapidation procedures.
Well, welcome everybody. Thank you very much, Damien, for the excellent introduction. First of all, I'll start by saying I've heard you all seem to be struggling a little bit with this kind of coronavirus that's going around. I must admit, I'm just sat here, a couple of cocktails, sat in Barbados, enjoying myself. You're all having fun. Anyway, let's get serious. Delaps. So, I'm not going to take on my background, actually, by the way, because hopefully it'll just pull us through this one. Nice sun, what we've all been dreaming about for the past, I don't know how many weeks. So, first of all, from one extreme to the other, I'm going to start off with the image that's been put up there. It's a bit of a stark reminder, I think, of what failures in our assets and our industry can cause. So, to start with, can anyone tell me where that image is from? Does anyone have any ideas of where that could be? So yeah, there's a couple right there. Yeah, absolutely. So that is in 2002 on the 10th of May, a points failure at Potter's Bar caused this accident. I know it's obviously it's the severe end of the scale, but I think it shows what a dilapidated asset can do in our industry. And obviously, I don't think there's anything more that can bring home the importance of what we're going to discuss. And obviously, that is dilapidation surveys. So moving on to the agenda, hopefully by the end of this short presentation, we'll identify the definition of dilapidation and what dilapidation survey is. Some common errors found, I believe, within our surveys. A couple of examples of different form factors in which dilapidation data can be retrieved, and how we use this data to make determinations. And finally, at the very end, just have a little bit of interactive session. I try and ask everybody just to throw some ideas and further improvements into the subject matter, because I do believe it's an important thing that we need to start kind of emphasising through the planning phase of our projects going forward. So, moving on to definition. So what is the definition of dilapidation? What is it? What does dilapidation mean? Well, it's a state or process of falling into decay or being in disrepair. And to visualise this, as many of our colleagues will know, and especially the guys over at RICEP, if you've ever been to RICEP offices, you'll fully appreciate the meaning of dilapidated. But I must admit, they've done a dilapidation survey, and from what I can see, they're actually doing a great job to bringing those right up to scratch for our excellent night staff that we have working over there. So, dilapidation survey. So now we know the definition of dilapidation. What is it that we are looking for, and what can we take, and how can we take this to start to compile data and analysis on our own assets? So a dilapidation survey is a survey of the condition of an asset at a given point in time. It records any existing damage and the state of any particular aspects of that asset that are likely to be affected by construction work, excavation, or demolition. So I like to start by breaking that comment down into two sections. So first of all, a survey on the condition of an asset at a given point in time. From a DLAP, we're able to make a determination of the dilapidated state of an asset due to multiple factors such as degradation, erosion, contamination, and environmental factors. We can generate this information in many different ways, but the two main procedures I like to address are visual inspections and the use of ATMS, which I'll go on in detail further on in the presentation. So, in a nutshell, how do dilapidations allow us to determine scope? Well, way before myself receives a ballasted track renewal or a P&C renewal as a delivery engineer, the initial decision is usually based on a few factors. It's based on areas that the maintainer has raised through track patrols and the number of work orders and faults that have been identified through these track patrols, or information generated by ATMS, the combination of both. This data and information is collated into a dilapidation report, which is racer, track engineering, and asset strategy. And then from this, we're able to look at this information, and jobs can be determined in terms of urgency, funding, and access. And collaboratively, scopes are determined to set forth from the strategic plan. There are other factors, obviously, which also have influential impact on the process of scope identification. We've got 2 other projects such as 4LM and PLU. But for now, we're just going to concentrate on dilapidated assets as the main reason is behind having a survey. The second point in that first question, or that first statement I like to address, is the state of any particular aspect of the asset that are likely to be affected by the construction work, excavation, or demolition. And I believe this is the aspect that we are more familiar with, as it's carrying out a dilapidation of assets which may be affected by the work we undertake. So before
we move on, Simon's asked if the maintainer is involved in the Dilap survey. I don't know if you're going to touch on this later.
Yeah, so very briefly, yes, the maintainer is and should be. Simon, I hope you can bear with me. Obviously, I do touch on that during the presentation and how we introduce the maintenance team into dilapidation surveys throughout the course of the planning process of a BTR. So I do touch on that later on. So before I do move on to the process of a dilapidation survey, I think it's fundamental that we understand some of the common errors that can occur when we carry out dilapidation surveys. So I've identified 3 common errors, which I believe have become our shortcomings in the past. But before I go through what I think, I would like to put it to the audience, and if anybody's got some quick examples of where do you think we fail or things that we can improve on in our dilapidation surveys, that'd be great.
So, Rooney, you're right. So we have a lot of problems with,
and obviously some of them, thankfully, is what I've captured in the 3 I've produced here. So number 1 I've identified is not dilapidating access points or wraps. I think an example of this back in the day would be Wormwood Scrubs road rail access point, for instance. If you're unfamiliar with that access point, it's a car park which serves both Wormwood Scrubs Prison, Damien can give you further details, and Hammersmith Hospital. It's a combination of the 2. It's a critical asset, and it was a critical that we handed that car back on Monday morning. Unfortunately, due to the loading of the machines on the surface and the heat on that particular weekend, we actually damaged the surface to a point where it was unusable, and resulting in £20,000 worth of damage and resurfacing. But it weren't just the cost of the repairs. The more important, I think, was actually the reputation of Track Partnership then at the time. Another example would be, and a lot of people are familiar with, is obviously Dagenham Motors. Dagenham Motors is heavily used wrap because of its obviously location. There's been many instances down there where I believe we could have done better in terms of dilapidation surveys or with damaged assets in the past. And one instance with the conductor rail issue, where we actually nearly overran on handing back to traffic. Another quick example I'd like to touch on, obviously, is station assets. Again, I feel sometimes we kind of overlook stations when we carry out our DLAPs. It's only a small example, but we had some tactile paving at West Ruislip station not so long ago, which was highlighted by the supervisor that had been damaged post-BTR weekend. Luckily, in this instance, we were able to come to an agreement on the outcome of this, but obviously on a different day, that might not be achievable. We can't use goodwill as a planning tool when doing and carrying out BTR works. The third and final one, which a couple of people have actually picked up on here as well, is a big offender of ours, I believe, and that's tie-ins, so the tie-ins of the BTR limits. This was ever present on a piece of work that we did one day on the central line towards Leytonstone. The original DLAP survey of the BTR was not agreed or signed by the track maintainer, nor were the tamping limits agreed at the time. So come to the completion of the works, the maintainer subsequently requested that the P&C layout be tamped, which the BTR tied into. This again was not dilapidated by the delivery team and was tamped without prior knowledge of the condition of the existing asset. This in turn caused major issues as the P&C had multiple component failures and the ballast and formation life expired, resulting in a poor quality tamp and took subsequent tamps and rectification works are correct. This delayed the handback of that project, in terms of it took years to actually rectify all this works, and obviously the cost was exponential coming to the end of it. I feel the last example there, it really indicates the lack of a process when it comes to dilapidation surveys and the understanding of scope identification. I think from these previous experiences, we've learned a lot about the importance of surveys, and it's something that we now address as standard practice within our reports to eradicate these common errors.
Rooney, before you move on, I think Joe Keegan wanted to say something. Joe, are you there?
Yeah, Bid, thanks for that. It was only about the Conrail, which you've addressed in the comments. So it was about the condition of Conrail from the dealer.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
There's also a couple of things on that point as well. People are saying condition of the conductor rail, headwear of the rail, and things like that as examples as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And these are all massively important aspects that we should be picking up on in the dilapidation survey itself, which is something I will address further on in this presentation.
From Paul Haynes as well, Rooney. He's asking, how far past our BTR limits are we considered responsible for the track condition?
So this is a very good question, Paul, and it's actually something that come to the very end of this presentation is one of the improvements I want to touch upon, and it's something obviously I will address there and then. But how I see it is that I think there needs to be a better education in understanding what our contractual obligation is in regarding limits, because like you say, we fell short on that kind of aspect regarding Leytonstone. I believe we are developing, and I think we are getting a lot better in that respect. We've had perfect examples where we did the points renewals at Embankment not so long ago, and at the time we worked together with the maintainer and the designers, and on that particular aspect we actually increased the tamping limits to remove geometry faults which weren't part of our works, but it was the right thing to do at that time. Tamp an extra 100 metres to rectify those issues. But Paul, you're absolutely right. It is something that I think we need to address, and it might be just something that needs to get sent around the business so we fully understand and appreciate what it is that we're contractually obliged to do. And in agreement, it's not just a case of us as Balfour Beatty looking at it with the blinkers on. It's to deliver a better service, to deliver better value for money to the client at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So, moving on to just a simple dilapidation survey process. Obviously, there's a lot more factors to this, but just to keep it nice and simple, we've broken down into 4 simple steps. So the process of this is to first identify the initial scope. This information can be generated and is generated by combinations of the IDRs, which are the initial design reviews, with cross-disciplinary agreements within those meetings, and obviously the TRS, which is the technical requirement specification, which is produced by track engineering. The combination of these aspects coming together on the initial discussions. Once this initial scope has been established, it's important that then we carry out the dilapidation survey on site with the delivery team, maintainer, and track engineering. And this is carried out to confirm that initial scope we've just set out. But during this process, obviously, all the parties need to agree. And obviously, any residual works that we identify on these walks need to be agreed. And for example, it could be a repair of catch pit. Obviously, the initial design might not have picked that up, but that asset may need fixing. We've got the closure. It's good value for money. Let's look, see if we can deliver it. And again, I've already used the example before about increasing tamping limits. Yes, we have our realignment limits, but have we got track faults another 20 metres down from the end of the site? Let's increase those limits and let's get rid of those geometry faults which can potentially impact the brand new piece of work we've just put in through poor running of rolling stock. Once obviously we've kind of agreed all this scope, and then the additional scope that's been agreed by the client, and obviously we can go on and work and complete it and hand back a successful project to the client. But I must reiterate the importance of obviously identifying this scope, and documenting the scope, which is extremely important, because obviously the people involved in the project at the very beginning are not necessarily the same people who are seeing this job all the way through to stage gate 6. It's important that all this kind of additional scope, if any, is captured in that dilapidation survey, so people have that record for handing back to the client further on down the line.
Really, another question from Simon, and he's asking kind of like the responsibility of DLAPs. Is there a specific team, or is it the engineer's responsibility? Whose responsibility is it to do these DLAPs?
So from my opinion, and obviously everyone's got their own opinion, I don't think there is necessarily a responsibility for one particular person or group of people. I believe that across the board, we have the skills and knowledge base throughout engineering, supervision, delivery managers that can carry out these dilapidation surveys. What I would say, though, is that away from this, I think we should look to do an exercise to kind of have a bit of a training, a bit of a workshop on dilapidation surveys aside of this presentation, just to understand exactly what it is that we need to be picking up and what needs to be detailed in there. But yeah, I think we've got the knowledge across the board that there's a hell of a lot of people that are clever enough to carry out these kind of surveys for us on behalf of Balfour Beatty.
Yeah. Another one from Steve Harper as well. Do TfL have a similar process to the Network Rail AMP process? Do you know much about that, or?
Question is probably something I would have to take away to see if we do, kind of being perfectly honest. Sorry, Vid, you broke up a little bit there. But just to answer the question, I say I'm not sure if we align exactly as per the AMP, but it's something obviously that we can look into and see if we have those kind of similar processes in place.
Okay.
So just before I move on, just the last important note I'd like to say is obviously it's just important to remember that a dilapidation survey, I believe, doesn't start on track. It actually starts from access to egress. There's so much more that we should be dilapidating rather than just starting that report as soon as we step foot on the railway itself. So I touched on a little bit earlier. Obviously, there's many different ways that we can generate dilapidation information. But I do believe that the two form factors I picked are quite well known in the industry in terms of what we do, and that is visual inspections and ATMS. So starting with visual inspections, and obviously that of track patrols. And I also mentioned track patrols or maintenance earlier on. So obviously track patrol is an activity which is carried out by maintenance. It's to physically patrol the section of the line, carry out visual inspections of an asset. Obviously, during this exercise, minor activities can and will be carried out, such as tightening loose fish plates, greasing, removing debris. But the visual inspection aspect for me is the key. So they're in effect carrying out a dilapidation survey on the asset in which they're inspecting by identifying and recording track faults, defects, and variations. And I've listed what a few of these for reference. Each of the elements I have listed on its own can play a major part in the safety and reliability of the service. And I think it's fundamental that we act upon the findings and rectify. Again, obviously going back to the first image you saw at the start of this presentation, a simple fault occurring due to a dilapidated asset and obviously not carrying out the necessary delaps can have a devastating impact. Believe it or not, but that disaster happened because of a couple of loose nuts on a stretcher bar. And that's what can cause such a catastrophe. So it's massively important that dilapidation surveys are carried out. But obviously, the majority of us, we're not in maintenance. And it's not just maintenance that carry out visual inspections. It's something we do as ITT for every BTR and every P&C renewal we complete. As I did mention a little bit earlier, the dilapidation surveys we tend to carry out are slightly different in the fact that we already know what's dilapidated. It's the reason we're carrying out the renewal. So instead, what we do is we look at the assets which may be affected by the work we're going to carry out. And to give you an example of this, I've taken a recent dilapidation report which was carried out for a BTR Martin did in week 47 at Hammersmith. If you could just open up the report, that'd be great.
Yeah, can you see my screen?
Yes, so if you could scroll to the bottom of page 1, please. So just overlooking the detailed scope of works, I'd like to start with the existing track components of the tie-ins. Again, I know I touched on it a little bit earlier, but it's important we understand what it is we're tying into in terms of the existing infrastructure. We need to assure ourselves that the current track form is adequate at that point, and there are no existing defects or non-conformances. And if there are, what we can do to rectify the issue and deliver right first time for our client. This is key to understanding and agreeing, so we don't find ourselves in the same position we did at Leytonstone those few years ago. A couple of people, page 2. A couple of people have already touched on this, and that is the conductor rail, and rightly so. Generally, we reinstate conductor rail to class 2 tolerances. We utilise, obviously, new polymer insulators, and we fit no anchors throughout. But we still need to provide the evidence that the conrail is fit for use. So we still carry out a full dilapidation survey, and an assessment is made as to whether the replacement of rails or ramps are required, and to make sure that rail is fit for purpose going forward. Page 3, please. So details of adjacent infrastructure that could affect our works. It's important we can identify infrastructure that has the potential to impact our works, as this helps us bring together a deliverable programme and allows us to put in place mitigation plans and response activities. First and foremost, by identifying these assets, we can look to remove these from site to eliminate the possibility of damaging them during construction. Very simple example, cables. We do it week in, week out. We strive to try and get disconnections, as many disconnections as we can, to remove that asset so it's less likely to get damaged. If removal is not possible, we can risk assess to develop the likelihood of an asset becoming damaged from the works that we're going to do, and we can put in control measures to reduce this factor. A couple of examples which we do are obviously catch pits, where we reduce the likelihood of damaging these assets by demarcating its location with visual aids such as lights and cones and barrier tape. And cables which cannot be disconnected, we protect those by the use of sleepers and cable protectors, and we minimise RRV activities around those as much as possible. This is all to prevent unnecessary damage to the infrastructure, which in turn costs time, money, and again, reputation. I think it's important that as well we don't forget environmental impacts. Environmental impacts should not be overlooked when carrying out surveys. Obviously, this instance at Hammersmith, we're all familiar with bird droppings on site. It kind of gets brought up quite a lot. Because the job was working into a tunnel portal, knowing that fact, picking that up on the dilapidation survey allows us to plan and mobilise exclusion zones, and it allows us to protect the health and well-being of our staff on site when it comes to the weekend renewal. Page 5, please. So this is another part of the survey, and this is where we produce a site features survey diagram, which identifies all the assets which I've just explained before, within the projected realignment limits. And all this is correlated to LCS. So we have all the locations of all the assets that we've been able to identify throughout the BTR. Again, having this information, it allows us to better plan our works and be more effective and efficient and safe. And if further works are required outside the proposed realignment limits, obviously we can just extend this diagram and capture those existing assets beyond the realignment that we've established there. And then if you could scroll to page 13, that diagram is the same for conductor rail. So page 13, obviously, as they always say, a picture paints 1,000 words. Obviously, the final part is providing that visual evidence of the assets discussed within the report. And photographs of the site provide the evidence of the dilapidated state of the asset at that point in time. They're a great aid in providing information back to the client, both pre and post construction works. It's important as well to remember that we don't just use dilapidation surveys as a tool to cover, I'll put it politely, our behinds as the PC. But we use them as a collaboration tool, building relationships with the maintainer, Because obviously by doing this, we can obviously identify works within the DLAP survey which could be included during the access period, such as, like I said before, repairing damage, moving and disposal of scrap materials, helping and working with the maintainer to have a collaborative and collective approach to renewing and maintaining the railway, again offering better value for money and service to the client, and again delivering works right first time.
Really, there's a couple of questions that have come through. Is localized contamination, such as grease on Conrail at certain points, picked up on the DLAP survey?
So I think it might not necessarily have been picked up on the survey, but this is exactly what this knowledge share is all about, I believe. And I think, yes, if there is local contamination which can be visually seen, then absolutely report it on the dilapidation survey. Obviously, we do go down the process of carrying out TBIs, which are track bed investigations carried out by a third-party contractor, who actually do full ballast samples throughout the phase and throughout the entirety of the works, which give us a lot of information in terms of contaminated materials. Obviously, the ballast, especially around greases, etc., etc. So yes, if by all means, if you are carrying out a dilapidation survey and you can visually see that there is contamination there, report it. Absolutely.
Also, is there a process to capture residual works that the maintainer wants done outside of like the original scope? Because I guess maintainers sometimes put pressure on delivery managers to do more than we're meant to, or
yeah, and I think absolutely, and I think that process comes from, like I say, first of all, it starts with a basis agreement in the IDRs. You'd hope to think at that point in time as well, when we have that maintainer present within their meetings, that they're coming to the table with additional scope that they foresee around that area. Obviously, don't get me wrong, the most important part is the fact that we are doing that BTR. They know that they've got an asset that is dilapidated and we're replacing that asset with new components. But yes, absolutely. I think it's important that we pick that up in these dilapidation surveys, and this information is collated and passed back through to track engineering, asset strategy, and through back obviously up to the client, and say, look, this is the closure we've got. We've got the program. We can tamp, like you said before, we can tamp an extra 100 meters without affecting our deliverables on that weekend with that asset. Then let's do it.
There's another question, or more of a statement, I guess. Terry from Terry Church. The DLAP form is out of date and needs to have more information and bullet points. I guess that could be like an action that comes out of this to review that process.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mr. Church, thank you for volunteering to help build a better dilapidation survey report. Yeah, absolutely. We can be for more bullet points and whatever else. Cheers for that.
Also, another one about Network Rail. They've recently updated their AMP process, and the forms are a lot better, basically. So I guess that's something that we could tie in with Network Rail and then try and implement it to us.
No, yeah, absolutely. End of the day, Network Rail themselves manage and maintain a massive infrastructure, and they obviously got some brilliant ideas themselves. Obviously, cross-party information, there's absolutely no problem if they're doing something that works and is good. Let's introduce it on our infrastructure as well.
Yeah, from Gallup as well. When will the DLAP doc signed by all parties? Is this part of an official system like Pathway? So is those?
Sorry.
I think what he means is, are those signatures for the DLAP survey, are they documented in Pathway?
So again, that'd be something I'd have to check. I believe not at the moment, and I think this is why it's so important that we actually push forward on dilapidation surveys and actually understand their importance. I believe they kind of just a little bit down the food chain at the moment in terms of where they stand within the processes of a renewal. And I think it's something that we need to move them back up that chain, because they're a huge important document, absolutely, and they should be on there if not already.
Okay.
So obviously that's just a quick overview of the current process that we're using, the current format that we're using for dilapidation surveys. I think now it's and stop listening to me with a Kahoot quiz.
Yeah, perfect. I'll just throw the Kahoot out there. Give me 1 second. Obviously, these Kahoot quizzes have gone down well so far, so we thought we'll do a couple more. If you all log on to kahoot.it and enter this pin, it's 440623. I'll give it a couple minutes. Can everyone see my screen all right as well? Got John in there. Oh, here they come. $16 already. Very nice. Give it a couple more seconds. Got 20. Try it. 10 more seconds and I'll start the quiz. Nice one, Rowan. Thank you. All right, we'll start now. So this is the Dilap knowledge sharing quiz. I hope everyone's ready. So the first question is, in which station was American TV personality Jerry Springer born? Looks like Jerry Springer's unsure there as well. Is it Highgate, Wembley Park, Camden Town, or Oxford Circus? Highgate, 16, got it right. Very impressive. I guess we got some Jerry Springer fans. Another quiz. So how many passenger journeys on the LU over a year? Is it 500 million, 1.37 billion, 3.21 billion, or 28 billion? $11 right again. A high-scoring game. Let's see who's in the lead. That's Amy. Very well played. Question 3: which line has the most stations? It's quite a tough one. Is it the Metropolitan, the Northern, the District, or Waterloo City? District. Correct again. Amy's still in the lead. True or false? 10% of LU stations lie south of the River Thames. The quicker you are, the more points you get. So 14 right again. Oh, Simon's taking the lead now, with John in a close second. Final question: how many stations are served by London Underground? Is it 301, 423, 33, or 270? 10. Again, a very high scoring game. So in third place, it's Pradeep. Well played, Pradeep. And in second, it's John. Very well played again. And the winner is Simon. Very well played, Simon. I hope you guys enjoy these kind of like quizzes. Let us know what you think of it. And I'll pass it back to Rooney. There you go, Rooney.
Thank you, Vid. Cheers for that. I know it's hard to put a Kahoot quiz together on dilapidation surveys, so I think you did well. So obviously I did mention, like I say, I was going to talk about 2 form factors. And obviously the second form factor is that of ATMS, which is automatic track monitoring systems. With the advancements in technology and obviously the ever-increasing need and drive for data, ATMS is a bit like track patrols on a 90s party drug. ATMS is a piece of equipment which is fitted to rolling stock, which measures and records at regular intervals the track geometry. It provides track view and wheel rail video, and can also provide noise and vibration information. ATMS runs across multiple lines on the infrastructure, generating a huge amount of data, which is fed into software called data map, allowing track staff, track patrol and track maintenance staff to produce dilapidation reports and visualize this information so work can be planned more effectively and efficiently. So the image on the left shows the output from ATMS, with the top section showing variations within track geometry, such as cross level, left top, right top, twist, all the track geometry typical measurements. The section below that is the track view and wheel rail video output, which can be used for many instances. Obviously, you can visually check rail wear, fatigue, degradation, and obviously checking joints on certain parts of the network, as the example is shown there on the image. This data, as this has been progressing, obviously the data then gets synchronized across the network by the use of radio frequency identification tags, or RFIDs, as most people know them as, which is the image on the bottom right of the screen there. They're generally positioned in the forefoot under the nega rail. They allow the data to be mapped against the location across the network, therefore allowing track staff to pinpoint exactly where a track fault or deviation in geometry is showing. Obviously, these run on a daily basis. So these daily runs and recordings of the survey data helps us build up trends on faults and allows us to predict timescales to fix these aspects. And obviously this information, as it's collected, this can mean a localized repair for a particular asset, or it might turn into a full BTR if there's multiple track faults and failures that keep occurring over a period of track. This information is obviously generated and can be logged in a way that fault priority is based on degradation rates and not just its current value. So what do I actually mean by that? So what it does, it allows for a better understanding of degradation in assets and materials. It gives a more accurate prediction as when an asset has reached its dilapidated state, therefore prolonging the whole life cost model of that particular piece of track. The combination of track patrols and ATMS information, along with the dilapidation surveys carried out within R&E, allows us to build a true representation of the infrastructure as a whole, giving us the data we need to provide a safe and reliable surface, and which I believe is the best network, underground network in the world.
Rooney, there's a question about ATMS. Does it pick up rolling contact fatigue and other rail defects?
So yes, ATMS can pick up rolling contact fatigue. I'm not an expert in the field of ATMS, but I do believe it's done by sending signals like radio waves into the rail itself, and then the variations in the signals that come back to ATMS can pick up those deviations in terms of rolling contact fatigue of the rail itself. So yes, there are other pieces of data that the ATMS is also measuring as well as, which is obviously a great maintenance tool to have. Yeah.
Terry Church has also said that Mark Hardy does a great DLAP. Can he be used to do them all, or maybe train some people up, or how would that work?
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I'm glad someone else has picked up on it as well, because Mark Hardy is kind of a bit of a unsung hero when it comes to dilapidation surveys, and the actual dilapidation survey I've used as the example is a dilapidation survey carried out by Mark Hardy himself. And absolutely, as part of the improvements program that I think we should be looking at doing for dilapidation surveys, is using the people like Mark who have got the experience to train engineers, to train supervisors and delivery managers and night staff, day staff, everyone across the board. He can work with those individuals and get them out and shadow and get them to appreciate and understand what a dilapidation survey is all about. 100% is great. It's a great asset to the business. So to summarise, hopefully now we know what a dilapidation survey is. Obviously, we know we can identify and rectify common errors that occur during surveys. Again, like I say, it's important that we start the DLAPs from access to egress. Hopefully we have a basic process that we can implement to mitigate against these errors as I've just discussed, and fully appreciate the importance of surveys and the form factors in which the data can present itself. But before I close the presentation, I'd like and hand back to our good friend Damien I'd just like to take this opportunity to ask the group if they've got any further recommendations or improvements that we can make, obviously to further cement DLAP surveys into the heart of our delivery planning process. So I'll kick start to get the ball rolling. So I've got 2 examples that I would just like to put forward. One of them is the key stakeholders being present on surveys. It's easy for me to sit here and say that we have all the necessary disciplines present, but in reality, it can be quite difficult. I think we just need to reiterate the importance of having the maintainer, for example, on the track walk, and push back to the organisation if it's not happening. Because the less we do of this, and the more we accept that we haven't got key stakeholders on these walks, we're never going to address the issues that we've got at the moment with DLAPs. And I think someone else brought it up. Well, they did bring it up actually, and I kind of quickly touched up on it. And that is understanding our contractual obligations. So I believe a piece of work needs to be done to bring us all up to speed on the contractual obligation which has been set out within ITT. Obviously, that's not to read the contract from start to end. I think lockdown would well and truly be over by the time you've done that. But I think just a little snippet so people can understand contractually what it is that we're supposed to be delivering. Because, again, it was that lack of knowledge and that lack of appreciation that led to the failings at Leytonstone and cost a hell of a lot of money and massive delays to handback.
Yeah, there's a couple of things coming in from Gary and Steve Harper. Obviously, we're in quite a unique position where we're Balfour Beatty and TfL. We should draw on each other essentially. So go into TfL, see what they do, as well as share all this with BB. Is that something we can look into, like all the different business units within each?
Absolutely, and I think obviously I've touched upon it in the presentation, but I think maintenance in particular, this is DLAPs for them is kind of their bread and butter, and I believe that there's going to be a lot of information that they generate that I think would help us hugely with our own planning processes that we do to deliver BTRs. So yeah, absolutely, we need to kind of generate that information from different parts of the organisation, not just from Balfour Beatty, but obviously LU themselves.
I think Damo's raised his hand. Damo, do you want to say something?
Just Rooney, you came through the Balfour Beatty apprenticeship scheme. Do you think it'd be a great idea? I know you mentioned Mark Hardy, and he does do a terrific DLAP survey, and everybody, I see Terry and Simon are all commenting on Mark Hardy. Do you think it'd be a good thing to put the apprentices out with Mark Hardy for a week, and you know, they could get to learn the different track componentry and stuff like that, and he can teach them everyone how to do an extensive DLAP?
Yeah, couldn't agree more, Damien. To be fair, like for the apprentices, obviously at the moment it's just a massive learning curve. As I've been there myself before, and I think dilapidation surveys kind of give you exposure to assets that you are not particularly familiar with. And if you've got someone there that can lead you and identify those assets to you, it just kind of gives you a better appreciation, a better understanding of exactly the environment that we work in. Because there's so many variables out there that we all know. And I admit myself, there's assets out there that I look at and I haven't got a clue what it is. So it's good to build up that appreciation, and it's just that basic knowledge understanding that is definitely vital for not just apprentices but for us all, I believe.
I think Pradeep has an example, I guess. So he says, at Queen's Park in 2017, the DLAP identified damage on the abutting PNC, which was NR infrastructure. This was used to prevent a 40k dispute from NR for damaging their points, but also being transparent because we highlighted the damage before the BTR. So I guess that highlights the importance of doing good DLAPs.
Absolutely, and like you say, that's a very good example because it's obviously, as anyone's familiar with the area of Queen's Park, it ties into Network Rail. It's one of our boundaries as such. And yeah, and again, it's funny you mention it because obviously we currently have a possession in week 12 delivering Queen's Park again, and it's something that once allowed to go back to work, it's another dilapidation survey we're going to be carrying out. And I think in particular, I think if I'm right in saying, I think it was 5 or 3 points on the network rail infrastructure. Again, it's something like you said, we will be delapping again to, and again, like you say, it shows the importance of why we're doing it.
There's another one that says from Simon Atkins to have almost a dedicated dilapidated team or a sub team within a team to take ownership of it.
Yeah, so it's a good thing to raise, and I think as we develop this, and I think as people become more and more familiar and have the training to be able to carry out dilapidation surveys, it'd be fantastic to get to a point where each individual team has that kind of experience. So each team is able to dilapidate their own works going forward, rather than having the reliance upon maybe 1 or 2 individuals carrying out the dilapidation surveys across the organisation. Obviously, we need those people now to give that training and share that information and knowledge. It'd be great to get to a point where we can have, like I said, people in every team that is able to carry out this function. And it's especially more so, I believe, people on nights, because the guys on nights, they're there every night. They see these things day in, day out. It becomes their bread and butter. And using that knowledge and experience to carry out these kind of dilapidation surveys, where possible. Obviously, we understand workload and whatnot, but it'd be great that we can get more people on nights that can do these surveys for us.
Yeah, another point, similar points from Steve Harper and Paul Haynes. So Steve's saying, can we digitize the DLAPs and utilize Field 360? And Paul said that has happened, or do you know anything?
I'm not sure of how far it is developed, but I'm 99.9% sure that is definitely happening. I don't want to put James Field or Megan Rayner on the spot here, so I'm not expecting them to raise their hand at all, but I know it is a work stream that is definitely happening, and Megan has shown me quite a lot of information actually on 360 about how we're actually now starting to build trends and patterns of aspects that can help us with further planning of our works. So yeah, it's definitely happening on Field 360.
Okay. I think that's all for now, Rooney, from the chat.
Okay, not a problem. Like I say, obviously, when we do wrap this up, if there is anything that you quickly just like to throw in a couple of suggestions, obviously we've got this group chat where we can pull this information from, because it is about all of us in one respect. There is a massive amount of experience listening to this conversation right now, and it'd be great to have as much input as possible to be able to build this dilapidation survey going forward. So yeah, thanks all for listening. I know it was a bit of a vanilla subject, not as sexy as the previous knowledge sharing that's gone in the past, trying to talk about dilapidation surveys. But yeah, thanks again. Have a cracking Friday. I know this ain't going to be orange juice much later. Anyway, put it that way. And have a great day. Enjoy.
Cheers. Thank you, Rooney. I thought it was a Harvey Wallbanger, not orange juice, but I never. So, you know, DLAP maybe not the sexiest subject, but it is very, very important. You know, what we do at the outside of the project, and it greatly affects how we deliver the asset back to the maintainer. I think you made a great point about documenting all scope, including the residual scope, because, you know, maintainers, some more than others, will not mention any names, but they put a lot of pressure on the delivery managers, you know, to do extra work. And, you know, we need to document that because, you know, we need to get paid for it, but that's it. But great points and well done. Thank you. So, as I've said previously, the narrative on this and the text is logged and recorded, and we're going to actually explore as many of the suggestions as we can. On that slide currently on your screen, on the right-hand side, it's suggestions that come in and who's presented it. A lot of them are coming in from senior supervisors and delivery managers. So we'd like someone from that field to give us a hand to, so the first one about 2-foot buckets and stuff like that. We'd like someone to help us explore those options the delivery managers and the supervisors would know a lot of the suppliers more than the engineering team. We have engineering support looking into the engineering issues that there is in Dan and Us, so he's helping us with them. So I'd like some volunteers or support in exploring what I've just suggested. So we do want to have continuous improvement from the feedback. So we do want to promote best practice and promote success. And as I keep saying, we do have unique ITT expertise within ITT, and it's unique worldwide. We have people there that have been out in the world, worked elsewhere. They've seen certain elements and certain work streams, and they can give us ideas of how we can do things better. So VID is going to send out a feedback survey. I'd appreciate if you could all fill that in, just to give us some more ideas. As I said, anyone wants to get involved in these, it is an open platform, and we welcome anyone from any part of the business, Balfour, Beatty, TFL, LU, Depot, night staff. We want a wide range of all subjects and a wide range of people, because we have, we want to advertise the whole business, what we do. So as I said, VID will be sending that out. So I'd appreciate if you could all look at that. And also the YouTube link is on the invite, and the live link is on the invite as well. So there's plenty of places to access this information. Moving on to next week, Amanda Theodoro is going to give us a presentation about the personal perspective of working at the integrated track team. Amanda, like me, has left and came back to the business a couple of times. So like me, I know and appreciate what we do well, and she's the same. She says, there's things we do really, really well, and a lot of people that haven't worked elsewhere take it for granted. So Amanda, a bit of background on Amanda. Amanda actually graduated in the UK with her master's. She worked in Cyprus for a consultancy firm for 5 years, installing sanitary wares in Paphos in Cyprus. So I'm sure there was plenty of partying done there as well as work. Amanda came to Balfour Beatty in 2013, and a coincidence is her first lead engineer was Rooney. So Amanda is an experienced PWA and drainage engineer, and she's an integral part of our works within LU. A fun fact about Amanda is she's an avid and passionate football fan, and she's actually, in her formative years, she's actually played the game in a predominantly male team too, to quite a decent level. But I want to thank everyone for all your continued support and spread the word that this is a good platform. I know I enjoy them on a Friday. It's nice towards the end of the week. I'm sure we'll all have a busy afternoon. It's a good interactive session. Lots of input there. This has been really, really interactive. This one particularly. It's good to see the delivery teams, and it's a good platform to touch base with all our colleagues on a weekly basis. So have a think and keep the suggestions coming. Thank you, and slán for now.